Is this the secret sauce for getting involved with airbrushing, or is it just a gimmick? What's up, everybody? I'm James. Welcome to Mechanical Mayhem. I want to do a quick impressions discussion here on this YYGYWEN airbrush kit. Now, that is a brand, but the brand doesn't matter. I will have a link to this particular one in the video description section should you desire to take a look at it more intently yourself. But things like this have been appearing on the internet feeds for me in a cyclical nature recently. I don't know why. AI is a weird thing, right? But they've been appearing as kind of ways to get involved with airbrushing if you're new to it, and also as a quote-unquote no excuse for not having an airbrush type of thing as well. Now, I'll say this right off the bat, and I stand by this, and I feel like it is as close to truth as you can get with a statement for this hobby, and that is you don't need an airbrush, right? You don't. But it definitely helps doing some of the more workhorse stuff, especially if you're going to have something big like this 1/60th scale shadow cat part, or you're going to do a lot of things on a much smaller scale, maybe a full squad of something in a different hobby, or a full lance or a full star all at once. You want to get some of the priming and the base coating out of the way all at once. An airbrush really helps with that. So if you are thinking about getting an airbrush for the workhorse reasons, then this kit may suffice. This thing retails full price at $60 US. Now, I got mine off of Amazon when it happened to be on sale purely by coincidence. That's what kind of made me pull the trigger for it. I don't know how often it goes on sale, so just be prepared to check out that link if you're curious, and it to be a full $60. But in any case, even at $60, I think this is quite a decent kit in terms of what you get. And what you get is a dual action airbrush that admittedly, in my opinion, doesn't feel quite as good quality wise as my first airbrush here, which isn't a particularly expensive or pro setup at all, but it is a master airbrush. It definitely feels made with more quality parts, a better fit and finish. I didn't notice any like O-rings or seals in this $60 kit thing, whereas this one you can see it right there in the front, for example. But that doesn't really matter, because the end thing that matters is how does it function. And since we're looking at purely for a workhorse thing, I can tell you that because I have given it some usage. But let's first go over the kit content. So you get this dual action airbrush. It can be black back here or red. Same thing as the compressor, can be black or red. And this is your compressor. It's a battery operated rechargeable compressor that feels like they took a tire inflator compressor and put it in this kit stripped down. And if that's the case, that's actually a massive bonus, because those things are workhorses. I have portable tire inflators for cars, and they are pretty capable with their charge, and they can flow a good amount of air, and they're pretty good workhorses. So that's pretty encouraging, actually, if that is what this is, and it sounds like it, and we'll get to that in a moment. Now, I have the airbrush connected directly to the compressor, and I didn't, that's because the hose they include I didn't want to use. You do get a hose, so if you really want to use one, you do have one. I just didn't like the feel of it. Plus, this is so light and small that it doesn't feel needed. I can just hold it all in one hand really effectively. In fact, the compressor serves as kind of like a stabilizer to a degree, which is pretty cool. You get two different type of cups that can screw on, and you get some cleaning tools. All in all, not a bad haul for the $60 price point. This means right out the gate, as long as you have the paint and you can thin it down, you can start slinging some paint out of this thing. Although you do need some extra stuff beyond this kit, but in terms of physically being able to aerosolize paint and spray it, you can do it right out the box with this thing. With that said, mine didn't work. The compressor worked, it flowed air, but the paint wouldn't come out of the cup. I could get air into the cup, but I couldn't get paint to come out of the cup, which, kind of a problem, considering that's its whole purpose. So I did have to disassemble it, and I soaked it, obviously off of the compressor, and I got some black residue to come out. And once I did that, then it started flowing. Now, I don't know if that's a common experience. I don't know if that even is Something that anybody else has experienced, probably is, but it's not a good look as a first impression. So just be aware that you may have to fiddle with it a little bit to make it work, which can be points off in people's perspective. But you'll have to break down and clean any airbrush you use eventually, so kind of being forced to in the very beginning at least will get you more comfortable doing it, but still not exactly a positive sales point, right? But anyways, after doing that, it sprayed just fine. So what I sprayed through it was some Mr. Surfacer 1000 in gray with some Mr. Color thinner to make it more flowy, and it worked really well. This shadow cap part was mostly done by hand on a C3 stream with a paintbrush, clearly. But I finished it up with the airbrush, and the results are just as good for either side, which is a testament to the paint as well as the capabilities going on. I also base coated, or primered I should say, this Elemental. It was a pewter model, it was bare pewter. I primer coated it, no problem with this airbrush. So it works. It does what it's supposed to do, and I'm gonna be honest with you, that might not sound like high praise at all, but I will be full disclosure with you here with this YYGYWEN. I expected this to be kind of a gimmick and not really work well. I expected it to be serviceable at best. Like, you can kind of get it to work. But it worked just fine. I got the base coat just fine, aerosolized the paint and sprayed it just fine. So I'm rather pleased, honestly. Like I said, I expected it to be a gimmick, and it's definitely not a gimmick. Now, you don't get any pressure control or anything like that here. Is really bare bones basic, but that's all we need for workhorse stuff, and it definitely achieves the goal of getting your workhorse stuff done more effectively. So as a kit, I would say as long as you're fully prepared to have to tear it down and soak it, I think it's a worthwhile purchase. And that sounds like a weird way to say it, but whether you're new or not to airbrushing, you may not just be down to have to do that right out the box. Doesn't matter if you own another airbrush. So as long as you're okay with that concept or the potential of that concept, I feel like it's going to be a no-brainer of a purchase if you're looking to be able to knock out some of the more tedious, time-consuming stuff. And, you know, primer coating 4-5+ models in one go or something really large is definitely a more time-consuming, tedious process that an airbrush can help with. As far as beyond that, when you factor in that this is completely portable, you can spray outside very easily. No hoses, no plugging into an outlet, nothing. And you can store it anywhere, pretty much. So you can store something that has enough of a footprint for this compressor, basically. You're going to be able to have this even in a premium space situation. Doesn't matter if you live at home and all you have is your bedroom to call your own and you're not allowed to spray in there for obvious reasons, or if you live in an apartment with roommates or by yourself. Doesn't matter the situation, you will be more than likely able to store this so you can make use of it in your hobby, which is pretty cool. Now, while it is $60 and I think worth it, that's not all you're going to be spending money-wise to actually properly spray some paint. You're going to need a painter's mask. Doesn't matter if you're spraying acrylics. You are aerosolizing paint into the air, and I don't know if you know this, our lungs aren't meant to breathe paint. So protect yourself, invest in your lungs, and get a painter's mask. Secondly, you really should spray in some form of spray booth type contraption, even if it's not an actual spray booth and just a big cardboard box with a desk fan sucking the air away from you as best it can. Just something to spray into to protect the area around you, and some movement of air to keep the particles away from you, even though you're wearing a mask, is what you're going to really want to spray properly if you especially want to do this in any sort of regular basis. So when you factor all that together, you're looking at probably closer to around $100 US, $60 for the kit, and then the rest of it spent on being able to, you know, for a mask and some way to spray, even if it's just a big old box to spray into when you're outside, right? Whatever the case is, it's going to be more than $60 to properly, safely use an airbrush. May sound lame or cliche, but it is worth investing in your health. Now, with that said, one other usage for this thing could be for the compressor itself. This airbrush is plenty serviceable, but I don't know how its longevity is, right? I haven't used it, day in, day out. I haven't used it over the course of a long period of time or anything like that. It's entirely plausible that the airbrush will work, but kind of have a rapid degradation issue the more you use it. I don't know. Regardless, you may just want to upgrade your airbrush a little bit. And so, something like this master airbrush here could also be screwed into this compressor. I believe I haven't given it a proper test, but when I looked at the fittings, they look kind of universal in that capacity. So, while it might not be able to stand up with a heavier dual action airbrush on top of it, if you're looking to upgrade your airbrush, but you still want this portability factor and you're not worried about dialing in, your pressure or anything like that, you just want to do workhorse stuff with a better airbrush, let's say, this compressor, I think, will have some pretty good service life in it and could be the most useful thing out of this kit for you if you're looking to spray anywhere very easily. So, some other ways to think about it. In any case, though, I would say a worthwhile purchase. I'm not regretting it. I fully expect it to be way more of a gimmick. It definitely isn't. It's definitely doing what it's supposed to do, and you gotta like that. So, do you need an airbrush? Absolutely not. Is this a really good way to get started and get a feel for airbrushing and determine how you want to go from there? Yeah, I definitely think so. Whether it's this brand or some other one like this type of setup is going to work. So, what matters ultimately for you, though, will be your thoughts. Let me know in the comment section. What do you think about something like this? Did you know something like this existed? Have you used something like this? Share it all in the comment section. Let me know. And thanks so much for stopping by. If you made it this far, alpha strike that subscribe button. Let's combat the algorithm together. And until next time, take care.